Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're picking up right where we left off on a local issue that has sparked, well, quite a lot of conversation and, frankly, a bit of contention. You might remember our previous deep dive into the Ghyll Charitable Incorporated Organization, the CIO, and that proposed 3G pitch in Southwater, West Sussex.
Yes.
Well, the story's moved on, and we've gathered a whole fresh stack of sources to go, even deeper.
That's right. Our mission today really is to pull back the curtain on these recent developments. We're drawing from council notes, official agreements, policy documents.
Yeah.
And we're here to help you understand the latest twists and turns regarding the Ghyll field. We're focusing specifically on access for the community, the legal obligations surrounding the land, and maybe what's driving some of these proposed changes.
Right, connecting the dots for everyone.
Exactly. Think of it as a crucial update.
So we started digging into what was said in a recent Southwater Parish Councillor surgery. And, well, what we found immediately raised a bit of a red flag, didn't it, for anyone concerned about the Gyll's future?
It did. What's immediately striking in the summary notes from that surgery is the whole discussion around community access to the Ghyll field. On one hand, the notes state that there are currently no plans to block community access, and that fencing, where planned, was for land management purposes.
Okay. Sounds reasonable enough on the face of it.
And this echoes statements made by the Ghyll itself, actually. We saw an email from Justin, which explicitly indicated access wouldn't be blocked. Sounds pretty clear, right?
You'd think so. But then the plot thickens, as they say. Because in that very same summary, you find conflicting statements. There were comments from some trustees suggesting that, quote, gated access has not yet been decided.
So, hang on. If you're a resident, what does this actually mean?
That's the core issue, isn't it? Can you still walk your dog there tomorrow? Will your kids lose those open spaces they're used to? It just creates this real sense of uncertainty for the community, leaves them with a very unclear picture.
That's a really crucial point. For the community, this isn't just about, conflicting memos. It's about a lack of clarity that can breed confusion and maybe even suspicion.
Yeah.
And to understand the root of this, we really have to connect it to the bigger picture, the legal framework that governs the Ghyll land.
Right.
So we dug into two key documents here. The original planning permission from back in 1984, we'll just call it the 1984 planning document.
Okay.
And the current leisure management agreement, the LMA, which sort of governs how the Ghyll operates, especially its financial and operational side.
And that 1984 planning document, Decision HR 4684, it has some really specific clauses, doesn't it?
It does, very specific.
It explicitly states that, and I'm quoting here, the existing public rights of way across the site shall remain undisturbed unless legally stopped up or diverted prior to the commencement of the development.
Undisturbed, keyword.
Exactly. So if you're walking across the Ghyll field today, that right is legally protected unless there's some formal legal process to actually change it.
Right.
It also specifies that any screen walls or fences need approval from the local planning authority before any development happens. And crucially, no gate, fence, wall, or other means of enclosure shall be erected or constructed in front of the forwardmost part of any proposed building. These conditions seem clearly aimed at safeguarding public access and, preserving the character of the area.
So this really begs the question then. Is new extensive fencing that might block access actually required by these legal documents?
Yeah, is it mandated?
Well, our review of the LMA, particularly its schedules, which outline services and payments, and looking at that alongside the 1984 planning document, it suggests a pretty resounding no.
Really? No requirement?
There's no direct requirement we could find to erect new fencing in a way that restricts existing public access. In fact, there's another document we looked at, clarification on public rights of way and access routes at the Ghyll.
Okay.
And it highlights that past vegetation clearance was done simply to restore access to an existing mapped perimeter route. It emphasizes maintaining existing paths, not creating new barriers.
So tidying up, not blocking off.
Exactly. The stated purpose was managing overgrowth, which had compromised site visibility, fencing, and public safety, which again reinforces this idea of maintaining existing public access and safety, not restricting it.
So if the law doesn't require new fencing, it begs the obvious question, doesn't it? Why fence it off at all, especially now?
The timing is interesting.
It certainly raises the possibility. Could this push for fencing be a reaction, maybe an individual response after that 3G pitch planning application was refused?
It's a possibility one has to consider.
The summary notes from that counselor surgery, they confirmed the planning refusal was discussed. And some trustees were interested in appealing, but with a comment that if an appeal were pursued, it would likely need to involve no additional cost.
Right, which suggests a strong desire to avoid further financial outlay.
Yet here we are talking about potentially expensive fencing. Has any thought gone into just how many people use this open access currently?
Yeah.
Or the impact on the community that relies on it every day?
And building on that point, the financial implications of any, unmandated expenditure, like significant new fencing, they're substantial.
Tens of thousands, potentially.
So basically, we don't have a specific document quoting fencing costs right here, but yeah, it can run into tens of thousands. And appealing a planning decision, the desire might be for no additional cost, but that rarely happens without some expense. Legal fees, expert reports.
Sure.
And the financial details in the LMA, particularly that schedule on revenue grants, they clearly show the Ghyll CIO's significant reliance on public money, your tax money.
How much are we talking?
Well, for example, £50,000 this year, reducing to £40,000 for next year. And the agreement states the Ghyll CIO will request a revenue grant on an annual basis up to an amount equal to the revenue deficit between forecasted income and forecasted expenditure.
Okay, so they need that grant to cover their shortfall.
Exactly. So any major unmandated expense, like this fencing we're discussing, would mean them having to go back to the council, cap in hand essentially, asking you, the taxpayer, for more money beyond what's already agreed and budgeted.
Which immediately leads us to think about parish council policies and potential conflicts of interest, right?
Absolutely.
The guidance from gov.uk on local authorities as trustees of charities is very clear on this. While councils can be trustees, those trustees must act in the interest of the charity, not those of the local authority.
The critical distinction.
And they absolutely must identify and manage conflicts of interest.
Yes. And if we look at the Code of Conduct for Southwater Parish Council itself, it states councillors should avoid placing themselves in a position where it gives rise to a conflict of interest and interferes with the democratic process.
Right.
It emphasizes core principles like selflessness, acting solely in the public interest and integrity, which means avoiding obligations that might inappropriately influence them.
And there's that line.
The explicit line, I do not use or attempt to use my position improperly to the advantage or disadvantage of myself or anyone else.
So when individuals are wearing two hats, trustee for the Ghyll and parish councillor, their decisions about the Ghyll have to be solely for the charity's benefit and align with public trust.
Exactly.
Okay.
Any perception, even a perception of using their council position to overstep their trustee role, or the other way around, could seriously undermine public confidence. And there was one other thing that struck me in the sources, actually. The legal advice mentioned for the Ghyll, it only seemed to come from one source. Now, for such a contentious issue, with significant public interest and potential financial outlay,
You'd think maybe get a second opinion.
you might expect that, yes, just to ensure all angles are covered, especially when public money is potentially involved.
Interesting point. And speaking of decisions and how they're made, there's another layer here. The parish council itself. It currently has vacancies, right?
Yeah.
And apparently no new councillors are being brought in until September.
Yes, and this immediately sparks a question about, democratic representation.
How so?
Well, the council's own councillor co-option policy states that while they're not obliged to fill any vacancy, it also clearly notes it's not desirable that electors be left underrepresented for a significant length of time.
Right, you want the council at full strength.
And co-option processes are meant to ensure a broad cross-section of skills and interests and avoid situations where there are insufficient councillors to share the workload. Now, given the broader discussions we often hear about needing diversity in local councils, a prolonged vacancy period like this, especially compared to other co-options in the past that apparently happen much quicker.
It could look like a go slow.
It could be seen that way, yes, a go-slow strategy. And it just begs the question, could this delay possibly be intended to limit the ability of new councillors, who might have dissenting views, to impact decisions on contentious issues, like this fencing proposal, or maybe other significant changes at the Ghyll?
Food for thought there. So, okay, after this deep dive, pulling all these threads together, it seems pretty clear there's no overriding legal requirement, from the sources we've looked at anyway, for the Ghyll field to be fenced off in a way that blocks current community access.
No, the documents seem to point towards maintaining existing access, not restricting it.
Which makes the potential risks involved seem even more significant.
Absolutely. What's truly significant here is the potential financial risk, obviously, but also the reputational risk
For who?
for both the council and the Ghyll trustees. Implementing a project like this without a clear legal justification, especially if it ends up requiring more public money beyond the existing grants, well, it could have really significant long-term consequences.
In terms of public trust.
Public trust, definitely. And potentially a considerable financial burden falling back on the community.
So this really raises an important question, doesn't it, for you, our listener, and for the entire Southwater community. Given that there seems to be an absence of a clear legal mandate for this kind of fencing, and given the substantial financial and reputational implications of closing off public land, how might the focus shift?
Shift away from imposing barriers.
Exactly, away from barriers and towards actually building back community trust through open access, through genuinely collaborative decision-making. What new possibilities might open up when the main driver for a beloved local green space isn't some external legal pressure, real or perceived, but a genuine internal commitment to the community's well-being.